Hello fellow Murdlers! Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024, and it's a great day to solve a murder. Today we have the mystery of the no longer living magician / real estate agent. We have 3x3 grids with suspects, locations, and weapons, and we do have statements today. What this means is that we have 3 statements. One of them must be a lie, and whomever is lying is our killer. The other 2 absolutely must be true, so we'll use that logic to figure out who our murderer is today and solve the who, how, and where for today. Let's go ahead and check out our clues and evidence. A fake sword was not found in the parking lot. So, fake sword here, I believe. Actually, should we go through our cards? Let's go through our cards. Alright, we've got Principal Applegreen, Officer Copper, and Mayor Honey for suspects, a saw, a fake sword, a deck of marrow cards for weapons, and our locations are the private library, the main stage, which looks like a sake jar and cup combo, and the parking lot. And one of the reasons I do like to go through the cards at the top is it just makes it a little easier to connect these icons to the actual clues, so that's why I do that if you're curious. Alright, so fake sword was not found in the parking lot. So now we know it's this sword looking icon in the car. So we can make an X here to say the sword was not in the parking lot. Alright, a Scorpio was in the private library, classic Scorpio. So for this, we can click through our suspects and see if anyone, well, see which one rather was a Scorpio. Today that's going to be Mayor Honey is our Scorpio in the private library. And that's it for our clues and evidence. Not a ton to go on, but I'm sure it's what we need. So let's go into our statements. Now again, we know one of these must be a lie. So let's go ahead quickly. I'm going to read through and see if any pertain to the things that we've already found, and if any must be true or must be false based on that. So far, not seeing anything. So I think what we're going to do next is go line by line and assume each one of these people is the liar. If we assume this is the lie, we need to see if these 2 can be true, and vice versa with the other statements. So let's assume Officer Copper is our liar. So that would mean Principal Applegreen was not on the main stage, which would put Principal Applegreen in the parking lot. That would then put Officer Copper on the main stage, and that would be our grid for suspects and locations. So let's assume that's correct, that this was the lie. So then we need these 2 things to both be true. So let's say then Officer Copper brought a deck of marrow cards. So that must be true if we're assuming the first one is the lie. And then let's see, a saw was on the main stage. Alright, we're out. So if this is the lie, we've already found that that would put Officer Copper on the main stage. And this one must be true that Officer Copper brought a deck of marrow cards, and this one would also have to be true that a saw was on the main stage. We know that this can't be true because that would give us 2 different weapons for Officer Copper, which will not work in this puzzle. So we know that this actually is true as a result, so this is not our lie. So I'm going to go ahead and reset the grid to where we had it before. I'm going to go ahead then and assume that Officer Copper's statement is true because we've just found that it cannot be the lie. Okay, so we've got our grid reset. We do have some additional information though, as I mentioned before. We know now that this is true. So let's say Principal Applegreen was on the main stage. That would put Officer Copper in the parking lot. Alright, that also gives us one other piece of information because we know that the fake sword was not in the parking lot. So then if this is true, which we know it is, actually we can kind of lock this in, we know that Officer Copper did not have the fake sword. So that gives us several additional pieces of information. Alright, next let's assume that Principal Applegreen is the liar. So Officer Copper brought a deck of marrow cards is the statement, so we flip that to the negative. Officer Copper did not bring a deck of marrow cards, so we put an X here. That would mean that Officer Copper had the saw, and we're out again because we know that Officer Copper was was in the parking lot, and if this is the lie, we know this is true. This must also be true. Again, we have an issue with the saw on the main stage. So this cannot be the lie. So Officer Copper brought a deck of marrow cards must be true. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these around to reflect that. Again, we already knew the locations and suspects grid from this being true, and then this one also being forced to be true gives us this additional piece of information here for Officer Copper, and also for Principal Applegreen and Mayor Honey with the Marrow deck. So that means that Mayor Honey is our murderer today, just by process of elimination. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in, but we still need to figure out the weapon for Mayor Honey, although we do know that Mayor Honey was in the private library. So let's go ahead and say this was false. Saw was not on the main stage. So that would mean that Principal Applegreen did not have the saw, which would give Principal Applegreen the fake sword, giving Mayor Honey the saw. So that is our murder weapon. Alright, so Mayor Honey with a saw in the private library. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take a minute to fill out the rest of my grid using the information that I've already found here and aligning it to the subsequent information in the other grid, and then we'll go ahead and see if we were right. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we were right. We were right. Awesome. Thanks so much for playing along today. I hope this was a helpful walkthrough, and we'll see you tomorrow.